40,000 megawatts orders expected within 20 years. From Land of Darkness to Northeast Asia Supergrid Hub. 28th, outlook on North Korea's power industry. Creating the miracle on the Taedong River, North Korea's Workers' Party can do a market economy. It is projected that within 5 to 10 years following the denuclearization agreement, North Korea will triple its total power generation capacity from the current 8,150 megawatts to 25,000 megawatts, reaching 80% electricity accessibility. Within 15 to 30 years, the country will add 2 large nuclear power plants with a capacity of 2,800 megawatts, bringing the total generation capacity to 50,000 megawatts and achieving 100% electricity accessibility, thereby transitioning into a net energy exporter. The most ideal power mix 15 years from now will consist of 30% large nuclear power and 20% modernized hydropower for baseload. Intermediate load will be handled by Russian gas-LNG combined cycle power plants at 25%, while peak load and distributed power will be covered by 15% offshore wind and 10% solar power. Small modular reactors, SMRs, will function as a 5–10% self-sufficient power source for special economic zones and industrial complexes. This mix is a structure that simultaneously achieves a base of 25% thermal power for carbon neutrality, diversified supply for energy security, 25% renewable energy share for cost competitiveness, and 50% nuclear and hydroelectric power for stability. Currently, North Korea's electricity production stands at 24.9 billion kilowatt-hours, which is merely 4% of South Korea's total generation of 570.6 billion kilowatt-hours. As of 2018, North Korea's installed power generation capacity was approximately 815 million kilowatts, which accounts for only 6% of South Korea's total electricity production. The most shocking figure is accessibility. The U.S. CIA revealed that electricity access for North Korean residents is limited to 26% of the total population, 36% of the urban population, and only 11% of the rural and provincial areas. This 26% accessibility is less than half the average of 48% in sub-Saharan Africa, meaning that for electricity infrastructure to be discussed regarding economic openness in the 21st century, it is effectively starting from scratch. Due to the power shortage, North Korea's factory operating rate is reportedly only 30%. Railways are also not operating properly. While it used to take 5 hours to travel from Sinuiju to Pyongyang by train, it is now common for trains to stop midway and passengers to wait for days due to power outages. North Korea's power generation facilities consist of a dual system of hydroelectric and thermal power. The largest hub in the hydroelectric sector is the Supung hydroelectric power plant. With a generating capacity of 700,000 kilowatts, the Supung power plant is North Korea's largest hydroelectric power plant. It was constructed by Japan in 1940, and while the officially announced transmission volume to China is 320,000 kilowatts, the actual figure is estimated to be around 400,000 kilowatts. As the facility is over 85 years old, there are concerns regarding the safety of the dam structure itself. Other facilities include the Seodusu March 17th power plant, 10,000 kilowatts, Taechon power plant, Unbong power plant, Hyeokyeon River power plant, 394,000 kilowatts, Jengjin River Power Plant, 381,000 kilowatts, and Bujongang Power Plant. However, most of these facilities were constructed between the 1940s and 1960s and are severely outdated. Furthermore, there is a problem of seasonal dependency, where output drops sharply during droughts. The largest hub in the thermal power sector is the Bukchang Thermal Power Plant. With an installed capacity of 1,600 kilowatts, it is North Korea's largest thermal power plant. Construction began in 1961 and the third phase was completed in 1984, however, since the 1990s, as the socialist bloc collapsed and the North Korean economy faltered, maintaining the facility has become a difficult task. The plant consists of 16 100,000 kilowatts condensing generators and 16 boilers with a capacity of 320 tons-hour, consuming approximately 5 million tons of coal annually. Due to the aging of the equipment, the actual operating rate is estimated to be around 40–50% of the installed capacity. Other facilities include the Pyongyang Thermal Power Complex, the Sunbong 616 Thermal Power Plant, the Chongchon River Thermal Power Plant, the Chongjin Thermal Power Plant, and the Suncheon Thermal Power Plant, but all of them feature equipment dating back to the 1970s and 1980s. North Korea's power crisis is not merely a shortage of generation capacity, but a multi-layered structural problem. First, due to aging facilities, the actual operating rate is only 40–50% of the theoretical capacity. Second, thermal power plants cannot receive a stable fuel supply due to the instability of the coal supply chain. Third, due to the aging transmission and distribution infrastructure, it is estimated that even when power is generated, the loss rate reaches 30–40% during the delivery process to demand centers. Fourth, due to a dependence on hydropower that is vulnerable to drought, hydropower output plummets by more than 60% during dry seasons. Fifth, due to a policy of prioritizing allocation to Pyongyang, it is difficult to supply power to areas outside the capital for even 1 to 2 hours a day. In 1994, North Korea and the United States signed the Geneva Agreed Framework, which included establishing diplomatic relations in exchange for North Korea abandoning its nuclear development, concluding a peace treaty between the two nations, constructing light water reactors in North Korea, and supplying heavy fuel oil as an alternative energy source. The light water reactor power plant that the U.S.-led Korean Peninsula Energy Development Organization, KEDO, was supposed to build for North Korea, at the time had a capacity of 2 million kilowatts, which is 3 times the size of North Korea's largest Supung power plant. This left a sense of regret that North Korea could have easily resolved its electricity shortages had the Geneva Agreement been properly implemented. This historic precedent serves as an important reference point in designing an energy support package following denuclearization. Let's estimate electricity demand following North Korea's denuclearization. After economic opening, electricity demand will increase explosively in 3 stages. In the short term 0–5 years, 75 to 100 billion kilowatt-hours will be required 3 to 4 times the current level. Driven by the normal operation of existing factories and initial demand from special economic zones. In the medium term, 5–15 years, 200 to 250 billion kilowatt-hours will be needed 8 to 10 times the current level. Driven by the modernization of heavy industry, manufacturing export processing complexes, and demand from electrified railway networks. In the long term, 15–30 years, 250 to 300 billion kilowatt-hours will be required. 40 to 50% of Korea's current level driven by full industrialization, EV adoption, and the transition to smart cities. This implies the need to build power generation capacity equivalent to 10 to 12 times the current facilities. Let us examine the phased power expansion strategy based on this. The short-term strategy for the 0 to 5 years following the denuclearization agreement is to secure an immediate supply. 1. Direct connection to the South Korean power grid is the fastest solution. The most feasible power supply measure immediately after the denuclearization agreement is a direct connection to the South Korean power grid. A 154 kV transmission line will first be connected to the Pyeonggui and Kaesong regions along the Gyeonggui railway line, followed by an expansion to the Kaesong-Haeju-Pyongyang section. Given Korea Electric Power Corporation KEPCO's construction capabilities, the transmission line connection can be completed within 6 to 12 months after the agreement. Initially, power supply will be limited to dedicated lines for the Kaesong and Haeju special economic zones, and then gradually expanded to the general Pyongyang power grid. The key advantage of this method is that if a barter trade structure is designed where North Korea pays for electricity in kind, such as minerals, seafood, or labor immediate power supply, becomes possible without the need for foreign currency. 2. LNG will be supplied via the Russian natural gas pipeline from Khasan to Rason. This project involves connecting a natural gas pipeline from Khasan to Rason in parallel with the already opened 54-kilometer Khasan-Rajan Railway. Russia has long envisioned this pipeline, and the denuclearization agreement signifies the resolution of political preconditions for the commencement of construction. Constructing a 501,000 megawatts LNG combined cycle power plant in Rason would immediately meet the electricity demand of the Rason-Chongjin Special Economic Zone. Furthermore, Extending this gas pipeline to the east coast of South Korea would complete the Northeast Asia gas pipeline connecting Russia, North Korea, and South Korea, thereby securing transit fee revenue for North Korea. 3. Immediately supply distributed power by urgently distributing solar panels on a large scale. Massively distribute Chinese and Korean-made solar panels to the rooftops of public buildings in special economic zones, industrial complexes, and major cities. The advantages of this method are that installation takes only a few months. It operates as a distributed system without large-scale grid infrastructure, and the cost is cheaper than any other power generation method, ranging from $500 to $800 per kilowatt. The fact that Pyongyang residents are already using small solar panels on a personal basis demonstrates that this demand has been verified. When combined with energy storage systems, ESS, and batteries, power supply is possible even at night. This is a project that International Development Financial Institutions, ADB, and the World Bank can support through climate finance. 4. Emergency repair and reactivation of existing power plants. Output is improved within a short period by replacing only the core components of aging existing power plants. At the Bukchang Thermal Power Plant, the current operating rate can be raised from 50% to 70–80% simply by replacing the boiler tubes, turbine blades, and control system. Output at the Supang Power Plant can be restored from the current 700,000 kilowatts to over 1 million kilowatts through the modernization of its turbines. Korea's Doosan Enerbility or China's Huadian Group are the fastest EPC partners. This plan is the most cost-effective short-term strategy, capable of securing an additional 2 to 3 million kilowatts of output within 1 to 2 years without constructing new power plants. 5. Emergency deployment of small LNG and heavy oil generators. Modular LNG or heavy oil generators with capacities ranging from 100 to 500 megawatts will be urgently deployed in container form to special economic zones and major industrial complexes. This method enables the fastest supply of large-capacity power with an installation period of 3 to 6 months and offers the flexibility to relocate to other areas once permanent power generation facilities are established. This method is the most realistic initial power supply solution for the reopening of the Kaesong Industrial Complex. 6. Establish a Northeast Asian energy axis by connecting the main Russian natural gas pipeline. The construction of the Trans-Korean gas pipeline, extending from the Kasan-Rason branch line through Pyongyang to Kaesong and Seoul, is a key infrastructure project for the midterm. This pipeline, with a total length of approximately 1,800 kilometers, will supply natural gas from Russia's Sakhalin and Yamal gas fields to all of North Korea and ultimately connect to South Korea. North Korea secures stable annual revenue of $300 to $500 million in transit fees, while also obtaining fuel for the construction of domestic gas power plants. Based on this pipeline, 500 to 1,000 megawatts class LNG combined cycle power plants will be constructed in stages in major cities, such as Pyongyang, Nampo, Wonsan, Chongjin, and Sinŭiju. LNG combined cycle power plants are optimal as backup power sources to complement the variability of renewable energy, as they have a short startup time of less than 30 minutes and excellent load-following capabilities. 7. We will promote the modernization and new construction of large-scale hydroelectric power plants. It is possible to increase total output by more than 50% through the complete replacement of turbines and generators at existing hydroelectric power plants. The core projects are the modernization of the Supang power plant from 700,000 megawatts to 1.2 million megawatts and the upgrade of the Siodusu power plant from 510,000 megawatts to 800,000 megawatts. If Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power KHNP and Doosan Enerbility participate as technology partners, this will become a symbolic project for inter-Korean technological cooperation. Regarding new hydroelectric construction, it is possible to develop undeveloped sites in the middle and upper reaches of the Yalu River, proceeding in the form of a North Korea-China joint development can attract Chinese investment. 8. We will establish a green energy belt on the Korean peninsula through the installation of offshore wind farms in the West and East Seas. The west coasts of South Hwanghae and South Pyongan provinces possess world-class natural conditions for offshore wind and tidal power generation, with average wind speeds of 6-8 meters per second and tidal ranges of 7-9 meters. The east coasts of South and North Hamgyong provinces experience constant strong sea breezes, enabling an annual offshore wind utilization rate of 35–40%. Denmark's Vestas and Siemens Gamesa, along with South Korea's CS Wind and Doosan Enerbility, are the development and construction partners. The goal is to construct a total of 5 gigawatts offshore wind farms, 3 gigawatts in the West Sea, and 2 gigawatts in the East Sea within 5 to 10 years. It is possible to export surplus electricity to South Korea via submarine cables, generating annual electricity export revenue of 1–2 trillion won for North Korea. 9. The introduction of small modular reactors. SMRs serves as a paradox for denuclearization. As a denuclearized state, the introduction of small modular reactors SMRs is possible under International Atomic Energy Agency IAEA inspections following the full return to the NPT. SMRs are small reactors with a capacity of 300 megawatts or less, manufactured and assembled in a factory before being deployed on site. Compared to conventional large nuclear power plants, they have lower construction costs, with a construction period of 3 to 5 years, require less cooling water, allowing for installation in inland mountainous regions, and generate less waste while offering high safety. Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power's ISMR 170 megawatts class, the U.S., NuScale 77 megawatts class, Canada's Terrestrial Energy, and Russia's OKBM Arytm 200 are leading models for introduction, deploying one unit in each major economic development zone, such as for the steel and mineral industries in Chongjin and Rason, manufacturing in Senuiju, and tourism and services in Wonsan, would enable electricity self-sufficiency for each region. In particular, the most powerful paradox is that the process of North Korea abandoning nuclear weapons and converting its nuclear technology into peaceful energy becomes the narrative receiving the strongest support from the international community. 10. Large-scale expansion of solar power and ESS. The large-scale deployment of distributed solar panels remains a key strategy in the mid-term. Possible implementations include building integrated photovoltaics BIPV installed across the entire rooftops of buildings in major cities such as Pyongyang, Nampo, and Wonsan, large-scale ground-mounted solar complexes in the mountainous regions of Hamgyong and Hwanghae provinces, and agri-photovoltaics AgriPV, which combines farming with solar power on agricultural land. When combined with energy storage systems ESS, stable power supply is possible even at night or on cloudy days. Furthermore, utilizing North Korean rare earth elements and graphite as battery materials makes it possible to establish a self-sufficient ESS ecosystem without reliance on imports in the long term. 11. We will proceed with the modernization of the national transmission and distribution network. A task that must be pursued in parallel with increasing power generation capacity is the complete replacement of transmission and distribution infrastructure. Reducing the transmission loss rate, which currently stands at 30–40%, to below 10% alone will have the effect of increasing actual power supply by more than 30%. We will construct a new national power grid framework, applying high-voltage direct current HVDC technology, and introduce a smart grid system to optimize supply and demand in real time. When integrated with KEPCO's Advanced Metering Infrastructure AMI system, this can evolve into an integrated inter-Korean smart power grid. The 15–30-year long-term strategy marks the stage of leaping forward as a Northeast Asian energy hub. 12. Introduce large-scale nuclear power plants to serve as the ultimate base load power. Once 15 to 20 years have passed since the completion of denuclearization and safety, regulatory frameworks and operational personnel are sufficiently established. The introduction of large-scale nuclear power plants with a capacity of over 1,000 megawatts will be possible. The South Korean APR 1400 and the US AP 1000 are the most likely models. Constructing 2 or more units on the west or east coast would allow for stable base load power to meet 30–40% of North Korea's total electricity demand. This represents a 30-year future version of the Quito Lightwater Reactor project, which was pursued under the 1994 Geneva Agreed Framework but ultimately failed. 13. Enter a hydrogen economy to maximize the added value of surplus renewable energy. Establish hydrogen economy infrastructure that produces green hydrogen using surplus electricity generated from large-scale offshore wind and solar power. If hydrogen is exported in the form of ammonia to Japan and South Korea from North Korea's east coast ports of Rason, Chongjin, and Wonsan, it can generate more than 10 times the added value compared to simple electricity exports. As Japan aims to import 3 million tons of green hydrogen by 2030, a scenario in which North Korea becomes an East Coast hydrogen export hub is realistic. 14. Realizing the connection between Russia, China, North Korea, South Korea, and Japan through the integration of the Northeast Asian power grid. In the long term, North Korea will become a key nodal point in the construction of the Northeast Asian supergrid. A transboundary power grid extending from the hydroelectric and wind power of the Russian Far East, North Korea, South Korea, Japan represents a new paradigm for Northeast Asian energy security. As the geographical center of this grid, North Korea secures triple revenue transmission fee income as a transit country, domestic energy supply, and the export of surplus electricity. By connecting it with Mongolia's abundant solar and wind resources, it becomes possible to form a clean energy economic zone in Northeast Asia with North Korea as the hub. 15. Cooperation in next-generation energy technologies such as nuclear fusion. Within a long-term perspective of over 30 years, cooperation in nuclear fusion research with South Korea, the United States, and Europe is possible. Transitioning the nuclear physics personnel of a denuclearized North Korea to peaceful nuclear fusion research is a powerful symbol of science diplomacy and a pathway for tangible technological advancement. This is a comprehensive design plan for the optimal division of roles by energy source. The most ideal power mix for North Korea 15 years from now is as follows. Base load power is handled by large-scale nuclear power 30% plus modernized hydropower 20%. Intermediate load power is handled by Russian gas-LNG combined cycle power 25% to complement the variability of renewable energy. Peak load and distributed power are handled by offshore wind 15% plus solar power plus ESS 10%. Small modular reactors, SMRs, function as a 5–10% self-sufficient power source for special economic zones and industrial complexes. This mix is a structure that simultaneously achieves carbon neutrality, 25% thermal power, energy security diversified supply, cost competitiveness, 25% renewable energy share, and stability, 50% base load from nuclear and hydropower. The strategies are governance and marketization. Reform of the power industry is the most critical institutional design task for the post-denuclearization economic transition. In the initial stage, the current structure of North Korea's Ministry of Electric Power Industry will be maintained while allowing foreign companies to participate in power generation projects, specifically the Independent Power Producer (IPP) system. In the medium term, structural reforms will be pursued to separate power generation, transmission, and distribution. The Korea Electric Power Corporation (KEPCO) model, which involves the separation of generation and the integration of transmission and distribution, serves as the most realistic reference model. In the long term, the economic transformation of the energy market will be completed through the establishment of a wholesale electricity market and the rationalization of electricity rates. Since no private investment is sustainable without rationalized electricity rates, this serves as the final gateway to the marketization of the power industry. Here are the financing plans. Short-term financing will be provided directly by South Korea, the United States, and Japan through the Denuclearization Economic Compensation Package, and raised through the Korea Inter-Korean Cooperation Fund and infrastructure loans from the ADB and the World Bank. Medium-term financing will be raised by repaying private IPP investments with electricity sales revenue, monetizing renewable energy investments in the international carbon market by issuing carbon credits, and reinvesting revenue from the export of North Korean minerals. Long-term financing will secure self-sustaining resources through electricity revenue after market prices are realized, revenue from the export of renewable energy, hydrogen and electricity to South Korea and Japan, and the creation of an infrastructure reinvestment fund using 30% of energy revenue. Here is a summary of the target figures for each stage. The short-term goal is to raise electricity accessibility from the current 26% to 50% within 3 years of the denuclearization agreement through direct connection to Korea Electric Power Corporation, commencement of construction on the Rason LNG power plant, and the emergency deployment of solar power. The midterm goal is to triple total generation capacity from the current 8,150 megawatts to 25,000 megawatts. Within 5 to 10 years, by combining 3,000 megawatts of LNG combined cycle power, 2,000 megawatts of hydropower modernization, 5,000 megawatts of offshore wind power, and 3 SMRs 510 megawatts, while achieving 80% electricity accessibility. The long-term goal is to achieve a total generation capacity of 50,000 megawatts, 100% electricity accessibility, and transition into a net energy exporter within 15 to 30 years through 2 large nuclear power plants, 2,800 megawatts, green hydrogen exports, and inclusion in the Northeast Asia supergrid. Electricity is a prerequisite for all economic development. No special economic zone, no factory, and no high-tech industry is possible without electricity. This is why energy support must be included first, and most significantly, in the first economic compensation package of the denuclearization agreement. Next time, we will discuss the outlook for North Korea's oil industry. Thank you.